Shadow of the Erdtree is now less than 2 months away. I've been preparing a brand new character for the DLC, and if you're jumping into the DLC, you'll either need to do the same or prepare an existing character. Today we'll cover a checklist of everything you need to do before the DLC, including how to unlock it. Let's go! Let me know in the comments what build you're taking into the DLC. So that first question is something that you'll need to figure out, right? It's whether you're starting a new character or taking an existing character or a New Game Plus character into the DLC. Now, from what we have heard, which we don't officially know because we haven't actually played it ourselves yet, the difficulty is apparently around endgame Elden Ring. So that's essentially everything from like roughly the Mountain of Giants onwards, like the Hallow Tree, Consecrated Snowfield, Farum Azula, that sort of content from the game. Now, what you could probably expect is at least to have a character that's rune level 150. Now, that's like the recommended level for PvPing and everything, but it's also the reason it's the recommended level for that is because it's a good level setup where you can really min-max your stats and create builds that are actually, end game specific while having your weapons like fully upgraded. Another thing to point out is probably one at least 51 poise. There is a break point at like more than 51 poise will actually allow you to take some hits and still actually be able to get your attacks off. Anything below that figure you won't, so it's just something to point out as well. As to like things to think about is whether you're taking a new character or a New Game Plus character is at least rune level 150 and probably poise around 51, so putting on heavier armor, what have you, to actually get that, and more than 51, sorry, is what you sort of want to aim for. Now, on a New Game Plus character, like the game will be harder because enemies will have a higher health pool. Now, something to consider if you are jumping straight into the DLC on an existing character that's like, in New Game Plus, whatever number you might be up to, is that their health pools will be larger and it won't be that necessarily cleanest, smoothest experience that you may have expected, right? Because those health pools are going to be larger, enemies going to be harder, hitting harder, that sort of thing. And like the point really is like you can definitely do that. There's nothing wrong with it, but it's just something to consider that potentially the New Game Plus like balance won't be as good as soon as it launches, because one would assume that FromSoft may be expecting people to start from just a new character, and there will also be a new like way to gain power in the DLC, which we don't have specifics on yet, but it is mentioned in some of the interviews that there'll be like something other than rune levels as a way to gain power as well. So there'll be a lot of things here that may affect the balance, but something to consider really is if you are going to take a New Game Plus character, make sure you are completely kitted, you have an exact build, you know exactly how to use. If you're going to take a new character, we're going to cover things in this video that you'll absolutely need to grab even on an existing character as well to really maximize your potential in the DLC and really prepare yourself. Because a new character, right, you don't have talisman pouches to have those 4 talisman slots, or you've always got to level yourself up and actually get through the game enough to actually be able to unlock and play the DLC. So should you take a new character or a New Game Plus character? Look, I think it doesn't necessarily have to be a new character, but I really think for your first time it should just be a character that is on their first game, right? You haven't started a new journey into New Game Plus. It's just, whether it's a brand new character that you've started like I've actually started, or if it's a character from, when you first played the game, you just haven't gone into New Game Plus yet, is definitely probably what I would do just to get that core experience where it's not sort of affected by some of the New Game Plus balancing. Unlocking the DLC is the next big critical thing you need to consider. The entrance to the DLC is all but confirmed to be Miquella's arm to enter the Lands of Shadow. Now, in order to access this and be able to open the DLC area, you'll need to do essentially 2 things. One of them is defeat Radahn in Caelid, and the second is defeat Mohg in front of the egg itself at Mohgwyn Palace. Starscourge Radahn in Caelid is the easier one to do, and you probably do this much earlier in the game. So Radahn is located at Redmane Castle in Caelid, and in order to start the Radahn Festival so you can challenge Radahn, you'll at least need to advance enough either in Rani's quest line where they're looking for Nokron, or to have activated a Site of Grace in the Atlas Plateau, and then the Radahn Festival will start. Now, this fight can be kind of tricky. It's much easier these days than it was at launch. To start the fight, you obviously want to summon all the allies around and avoid his arrows that he will spam at you. Pro tip here is that if any of your allies fall, as in they die, you can actually re-summon them. Their summoning signs will be near where he sort of spawns at the start, so if that does happen, you can summon them back to help you for that encounter as well. It is a tricky fight, but the main thing is to just avoid his attacks and stay alive, let your allies deal as much damage as you can, and then just do hit and run tactics on Torrent. Mohg, on the other hand, is a little bit trickier. You've got to actually get to Mohgwyn Palace first. Now, there's two ways you can do this. First is via Var's quest line. This is the earliest way that you can get to Mohgwyn Palace, and I believe all you need to have done is beaten Godric the Grafted. You'll actually find Var at the Rose Church in the Lurnier of the Lakes. By talking to him, he will give you some festering bloody fingers. Now, you'll need to invade 3 other players and deal with them in PvP, and then go back and talk to Var. Now, you don't have to win those fights. If you're from Australia, like me, you absolutely are not winning any of those fights because of internet lag, but once you've lost 3 fights, you can go back to Var and he'll give you the Lord of Blood's favor item. And what you'll need to do with this is moist that item with some dead maiden blood. Now, in order to do that, you'll need to find a dead maiden. The easiest one to get is at the Church of Inhibition, which is actually in sort of the northeast of Lurnier of the Lakes. If you go up here, you will need to defeat Vyke, who will invade you here, and then there is a maiden at the Church of Inhibition that you can soak this cloth in. Go back to Var, he will give you the bloody finger item and the Pure Blood's Knight's medal. Now, if you just use this medal, it will transport you to the entrance of Mohgwyn Palace, and that's the fastest way to actually get there. Though everything in that area is going to be very tough, so just be mindful of that you're probably not necessarily ready for that level of content if you're just on a brand new playthrough and you're just, trying to get there. The other way is through a portal in the Consecrated Snowfields. Now, the Consecrated Snowfields, you will actually need to access this via the secret medallions, and there's 2 halves of that medallion. The first is found in the village of Albanorix in Lurnier of the Lakes by talking to Albus, who's disguised as a pot. He will give you the first half, and the second half is actually found in the Mountaintops of Giants at the top of Castle Sol after defeating Commander Nowell. You'll need to defeat him, and you'll be able to get both of those pieces. Now, you can do that to then get to the Consecrated Snowfields, and then right sort of in the west-ish area, there will be a waygate here that will take you to Mohgwyn Palace, and you'll just need to find your way up to the very top to fight Mohg. Now, Mohg is a tough fight, and you can definitely expect the DLC to be as tough as him, so it's a good sort of check to see, if you're ready for the DLC. Some tips for fighting Mohg is he is weak to cold and blood loss, but he also does blood loss to you, so bringing either weapons or pods that can do frostbite or hemorrhage is definitely a good idea. Bringing some staunching bolasses to stop the blood loss on yourself is also valuable. There are 2 items that really make this fight significantly easier. The first is Mohg's Shackle. Now, what this will do is temporarily stun Mohg during his first phase. To get Mohg's Shackle, it's actually found in the Lindale Royal Capital, down in the subterranean shunning grounds sewers. It's guarded by a couple of crayfish down here, but you'll essentially, if you start from the grey side, work your way all the way down to the bottom, you'll be able to find it down in there. And the Purifying Crystal Tear is the other item, which will actually negate the effects of Mohg's nihil attack, which he does at half health, sort of when he switches from phase 1 to 2. Now, in order to get this, you'll need to defeat Eleonora, the Violent Bloody Finger, at the Second Church of Marika in the Atlas Plateau. Then you'll need to put this on your Wondrous Flask, and you can just pop this at any time, like at the start of the fight. As long as you've got it active when he does the attack, it will actually consume that rather than actually damaging you. And then good luck, right? Use your Mimic Tears, use anything else you like, and then once you've beaten him, you're essentially ready to go to access the DLC, but you want to make sure your character is actually set for that by completing the next few things on this list, right? So we're going to go through a couple of checklist items that you probably want to make sure you are done and before the DLC actually comes out. The first is having the 4 Talisman Slots by acquiring the 4 pouches. The second is your Flasks and Sacred Tears. The third is your upgrade materials. And the fourth is your Larval Tears and respecking. And the sort of, loose fifth is essentially having a build that you are absolutely happy with and know how to use comfortably right when you access the DLC. Now, I've obviously got tons of build videos on the channel which you can go and check out, but I'm going to have a couple of new ones coming out specifically for the DLC, as well as a couple that are more updated builds because, things have changed since the launch of Elden Ring in terms of balancing. So we'll start with the Talisman Slots first. Now, this is one that's super easy to get. You essentially just need to progress through the game. You'll get your first Talisman pouch to have 2 Talisman Slots by defeating Margaret the Fell Omen in Storm Hill. The second one comes after you've got 2 Great Runes. Any 2 Great Runes, you just need to defeat 2 demigods by talking to Enya at the Round Table Hold. She will then give you your second Talisman pouch, and the last Talisman pouch comes from defeating Godfrey, the first Elden Lord, the Golden Shade version of him at Lindale Royal Capital the first time you get there. Next, you will need your flasks and sacred tears. Now, the main flask you'll need to grab is the Flask of Wondrous Physique. We already touched on earlier in this video why it's good. At the third Church of Marika side of Grace, just laying on the ground here in front of the statue, you'll be able to grab this flask. Now, this does need tears in order to operate. Now, the tears that you get are pretty build dependent. Like, you know, it depends on what sort of build you're running. And essentially, we've already touched on one of them, right? Like the one that's good for the Moog fight. But you can put 2 tears in here that are really beneficial to your build. For the most part, you'll find tears at any of the minor Erdtrees. One that I would definitely grab is the Opaline Bubble Tear, which is actually available at the Weeping Peninsula. The minor Erdtree there, it's dropped by the avatar once you defeat him. Now, this significantly negates damage on the next hit, essentially allowing you to take 1 hit of any amount of damage. I always have this on my flask. It's just something that I find really valuable, like, you know, as a backup option if, you know, I'm not sure about certain encounters or how much damage certain things do, or I'm still learning fights. I find it's a good way to help me in those specific scenarios, so it's one to definitely grab. Obviously, you want to make sure you've collected golden seeds from all the illusionary Erdtree saplings. You need to have collected 30 seeds to max out your flask, which you can absolutely do before New Game Plussing. There are plenty of those saplings around. The sacred tears as well, these are used to increase your flask amount, like how much it actually restores. There are 12 sacred tears in total, and they're found at the various churches throughout the game. The next one is probably one of the most important, and it's definitely one that you may not consider, and that's the upgrade materials and their relevant bell bearings. The reason this is going to be important is that you are absolutely going to find a ton of new weapons throughout the DLC, and you're probably going to want to use them as fast as possible. And because in the base game you can actually get the bell bearings, which just allow you to buy an infinite amount of these smithing stones and somberstones, etc., you'll then actually just be able to have heaps of these and immediately switch to these new weapons to try them out as soon as you get them by leveling them up, so they're actually relevant to you. Once you've collected the bell bearings, you'll need to hand them into the Twin Maiden husks at the round table hold, so you can buy the endless supply of them. Now, these do carry over to New Game Plus now, by the way. That was a change after launching one of the patches. The smithing stone bearings, there are 4 of these to collect. The first one is dropped by the Crystallian boss at the end of the Rhea Lucario Crystal Tunnel. The second one is found pretty close to the side of Grace for the sealed tunnel in the Atlas Plateau. Just near the entrance, there will actually be a chest here that you can open, which will have the second smithing stone bearing in. The third one is found in the Zamor ruins in the mountaintops of Giants. There is a chest down some stairs in the cellar at sort of the top tip of the runes. Once you go all the way up there, there'll be a flight of stairs that you go down. There'll be a chest there to open. The fourth one is found in the crumbling Farah Mazula. This is dropped by the Godsquin duo inside the Dragon Temple once you have defeated them. One thing to consider here is that Faramazula is, you know, it's considered endgame, and it does make a significant change to the overall world state once you have access to this area. This is potentially something you don't want to do before the DLC. I'm being intentionally vague in case you haven't done this before, like spoilers, etc. But it's just something to consider that maybe the first time you do the DLC, you may not want to have access to Faramazula just in case the events that accessing it triggers will change something that might happen in the DLC. It's just something to consider, right? There's no guarantee it does happen. I just wanted to call it out. The Somberstone bearings, there are 5 of these actually defined to upgrade the unique items. The first is found in the Celia Crystal Tunnel, which can be found in Caelid. You'll need to defeat the Falling Star Beast at the very end, and he will drop the first bell bearing for you to grab. The second is found by defeating the Crystallian boss duo at the end of the Atlas Tunnel in the Atlas Plateau. Definitely a good fight to use some spirit summons because Crystallians suck to fight, in my opinion. The third one is found in the first Church of Marika at the mountaintops of Giants. No fight here, you just need to pick it up from the corpse on the ground. I'd already picked it up here, so just imagine my character, you know, bending down, picking it up, etc. All right, now the last 2 are found in Faramazula. Again, same caveat as earlier. The first is found on a corpse on the edge of the cliffs by the tempest-facing balcony site of Grace, and the last one is found in a small church in Faramazula right beside the Great Bridge site of Grace. You may also want to grab the Glovewort picking bell bearings for spirit summons in case there are new spirit summons. We don't 100% know, as it hasn't been mentioned in any of like the marketing or anything, so I consider these to be less critical, but I'll tell you where they are just in case. Now, the first is from the Erdtree Burial Watchdog at the end of the Windham Catacombs in the Atlas Plateau / Mount Gilmere. It's sort of in between that area. The second one is dropped by the ulcerating tree spirit in the Giants Mountaintop Catacombs in the Mountaintops of Giants. And the third one is found next to a lake in the crumbling Farah Missoula. The last item on our checklist is Larvel Tears. Now, Larvel Tears are a limited resource that you'll use to respec your stats with Renala, so I would recommend to beat Renala at the Rey Lucario Castle before you go into the DLC on whatever character you are. This is important if you are, say, on like a New Game Plus character, right? Like you want to make sure you've beaten Renala before you go off into the DLC, just in case you want to return here to respec yourself because you found like a new cool weapon that you want to use. Now, the Larval Tears that you use here are a limited resource. I believe there's only like 16 or 17 or something like available per playthrough. Hopefully there is a vendor in the DLC that sells an unlimited amount of these. I will have a link in the comments to an article that covers the locations of all of these. One like easiest way to get them really is just to go to the Eternal Cities of Nokron and Noxtella. There's like 7 of them found down there, but essentially you want to just make sure you've got a fair amount of these to bring with you into the DLC, because you probably will want to respec and switch your builds to like new weapons and things that you find that are just you want to tinker with, right? Like it's one of the funnest things about Elden Ring and the base game is just tinkering with weapons and different builds and stuff. It's something that I fell in love with the game, and I'm so excited to have these new weapons and things we find to be able to do it again. So definitely have some of these Larval Tears, have defeated Renala so that you can comfortably respec and then get into the action when the DLC releases on June 21st. But let me know anything I've missed in the comments down below. Thank you guys for watching this video till the end. Thank you to our members for supporting the channel. My name is Norza, and I hope you have a great day.